Welcome to ground control. I have removed the 30 amp speed controller from this F16 and I have installed a 40 amp speed controller. I wasn't sure if that was going to be a big enough speed controller, but when it had the stock speed controller in it with a 3S LiPo, running it up at full throttle, it was pulling 28.5 amps at full throttle. Okay, after I put a 4S in it and a 40 amp speed controller, ran it up, full throttle was pulling 32.8 amps, 4.3 additional amps. Now that doesn't seem like, that seems like a lot less than it should have been pulling. I figured I was going to have to limit the top end of the throttle to keep them going over 40 amps. But 32.8 amps is what it was pulling, so I don't know how much additional thrust that 4S is going to produce, considering it only pulled 4.3 additional amps at full throttle. I don't know. I know the plane is going to be about 38 grams heavier than it was on a 3S LiPo stock, because it was a pretty lightweight 30 amp speed controller. I pulled out the 30 amp speed controller and I weighed it, and it weighed 26.2 grams. And then I weighed the 40 amp speed controller I had, which was, you know, the form factor is a lot bigger than the 30 amp speed controller that was in here. And it was 47.8 grams. That's 21.6 grams heavier than that 30 amp speed controller that it came with. And the battery that I'm going to be using is a Tattu 4S 1050 milliamp hour 95C LiPo. And it is going to be 16 grams heavier than the 3S 1300 milliamp hour 30C LiPos that I was using. Those were 106 grams. The Tattu 4S LiPos are 122. So I'm going to be considerably heavier on the 4S setup than I was with the 3S setup. I think my all up weight now is 524 grams. So I don't know. Well, I've got 3 of those LiPos. We'll go ahead, we'll take it out to the field, throw it in the air. If it goes well during the first flight, then I'll go ahead and put the other 2 LiPos in it. I'm going to set my timer for 2.5 minutes, even though per cell it's pulling 1.3, I think it was, let me see, 9.5 amps per cell on the 3S and 8.2 amps per cell on the 3S, which is 1.3 fewer amps per cell on the 4S compared to the 3S. But I don't, since it's a smaller LiPo, it's a 1050 milliamp hour compared to a 1300. I'm not sure how much flight time I'm going to be able to get out of it, so I'm going to set the timer on my first LiPo at 2.5 minutes, and then, you know, once I get my alarm on the timer, we'll land it, we'll check the voltage in the battery, assuming that I have more power with this 4S than I had with the 3S, and if everything goes well, we'll put the other 2 battery packs in it, and then I'll tell you what I think about it. But I definitely wanted to try this with a 4S setup, because the F86 Saberjet that I put a 3S Plus power system in was a little rocket compared to the way it performed on the 3S. So I'm hoping I get similar results from this, but I will see you out at the field.
Okay, this is going to be my first 4S test with the Eachine F16 550mm EDF jet. I don't know what to expect, because it is quite a bit heavier than it was on the 3S setup. We don't have a lot of wind out here this morning, which is good. Alright, let's see what we got. I'm going with a full throttle launch, so are we ready? Are we ready? Alright, launching. Well, that was kind of a bad launch. I kind of pushed it down a little bit, didn't I? Kind of rolled it over. I know, we'll come back through here and do a vertical full throttle and see what we have. Yeah, it's definitely better, isn't it? I've got my timer set for 2.5 minutes because I don't know. You know, these little 1050 milliamp hour LIPOs, I don't know how long they're going to last. I wish I'd have had a smaller, lighter weight 40 amp speed controller to put in it. Alright, let's just do a standard loop here. Stay out of the sun. I would say it definitely has some better performance on 4S than it had on 3S. Especially vertical. Yeah, definitely better. Alright, my timer has just ended. Oh, that was quick, 2.5 minutes. Alright, let's come around, do another little circuit here real quick. Let's see if we can bring it in for a landing. Oh man, I was out of juice, guys. I was out of juice. I shouldn't have made that one last circuit. I should have just brought it in. Yeah, that 1050 milliamp hour 4S did not last too long, and of course I was heavy in the throttle the vast majority of the time. Well, at least it's flat on its bottom. My canopy ejected again. Oh no, not my canopy. Oh no. Alright, let's see. Clear the scrub out of everything. Let's see. Make sure that we're still intact with everything. Okay. Landing skids are still intact. Got a little dirt on the bottom of it. The nose is still on it. Okay, so that was a pretty good flight. I definitely like it on 4S better than 3S. Does have more power than it has on 3S. It's not significantly more than as much as I thought it was going to be. And my first indication with that was the amount of amp draw that it had on 4S. It was only 4.3 amps more than on 3S, which pretty much told me that I was not going to see a huge jump in performance on this jet on 4S compared to 3S, but it is definitely higher performance on a 4S than it is on a 3S. I mean, that vertical climb was awesome, and those big, huge, wide loops. I didn't see a whole lot of additional speed out of it, but it does have a bit more power on 4S. So I definitely liked it better on 4S. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put the other two 4S Lipo packs in it. Get a little more comfortable on 4S, but I want to check the voltage on it real quick and see, because I was completely out of power there. Completely out of power. I had nothing left. Battery's a little bit warm. Warmer than the 3S LIPOs, I'd say, not hot. Alright, let's see if you can see this. 3.06. So it pulled the cells all the way down to 3. So it was definitely shutting down the power. 2.9. Ooh. Alright, so on these little 4S LIPOs, I went 28 seconds over, but I was completely out of power. So I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to set it down to 2 minutes to make sure that I've got enough left to make one more circuit before I bring it in for a landing. Alright, so I'll see you in a minute. We'll put another 4S in it. Let's see if we get a little better launch this time. Launching. Yeah, that was better. Be a little easier on it this time than I was last time. Well, I could tell it's moving faster because it sure is pivoting a lot faster. So I think on 4S, one thing I'm going to have to do is probably increase my expo a little bit in the pitch axis, because it's definitely rotating faster. Yep, definitely has more power. So I think that, you know, putting a much lighter weight ESC on it, a 40 amp ESC, because I think I could probably cut that down by about 10 grams and use a 1300 milliamp hour 4S LiPo. I think you're probably going to be looking at, you know, close to 3 minutes, somewhere between 2.5 to 3 minutes of flight time with it on 4S, on a 1300 milliamp hour 4S. But you don't want to put too heavy of a 4S in it, because then you're going to be right back to the performance you had with a 3S, right? Yeah. Alright, so, oh, there we go. Alright, so let's make sure I have enough juice this time for a landing, alright? Let's bring it around. I'm curious to see. I was a little bit easier in the throttle this time than I was last time. Oh man, I am telling you. Trying to bring it in easy, couldn't get it over the lane. Oh, I am definitely punishing this airframe today. What is wrong with me? Anyway, let's see. Let's make sure everything is still intact. Trying to get in a hurry to bring it in before my battery's depleted. I end up putting it in the scrub. Not good. Well, my canopy stayed on that time. That's good. Alright, so it looks like everything is still intact. Now, let's check the voltage on it this time and see where we're at. Okay, let's see. Hopefully you guys can see this. 3.75, 3.75, 3.75. So you can tell not only that I cut the time back to 2 minutes, but I was a lot easier in the throttle than I was on that first flight. And on that first flight, I was really hammering it the whole time. Alright, so I got one more 4S LiPo to put in it. So we'll put one more flight on it on this 4S setup. I'll see you in a minute. And let's see if we can actually get it over the lane on the landing this time. Alright, launching. I did increase my expo on my elevator just a little bit. Might be a little bit faster on 4S. Nice big loops with it. Handles really well with the additional weight. Awesome. Okay. Alright, let's see if we can get it over the lane this time. What do you think? Hard landing, but it's on the lane. Alright, so let me tell you my feelings about this. Let me make sure my skids and stuff are still on it. And see what kind of pushed it a little bit harder that time than I did last time. So I want to check and see what the voltages are again. But the performance is definitely much improved on the 4S LiPo. It will climb vertical extremely well. A little bit faster in straight and level flight than it was on the 3S. But it depletes these 1050s pretty darn quickly. So I would say if you were putting a 1300 milliamp hour 4S LiPo in it instead of these 1050s, and you were pacing yourself a little bit and weren't hard in the throttle during the whole flight like I was in the first flight, then I think you could probably stretch it out to about a 3-minute flight time on a 1300 milliamp hour 4S LiPo. I would choose one that's probably more like this is a 95C, so maybe a 75C 4S LiPo. Let's check our voltages again. 3.7, 3.7, 3.7. Okay, so I could have pushed it a little bit harder, or I probably could have had, the way I was flying, I probably could have set my timer for 2.5 minutes on that 1050 4S LiPo, 95C. So I would say if you get a 4S 1300 milliamp hour 75C, because the lower the C, the lighter the battery is my experience. I guess it's because the cells are less dense, I don't know. And shave off about 10 to 12 grams on that 40 amp speed controller, then I think flying the way I was flying during this flight, you could probably get 3.5 minutes of flight time out of it if you didn't have to leave any in reserve. So if you fly it more like I fly it when I'm flying on a 3S LiPo, a 3S 1300, where I'm not in the throttle constantly. I'm cruising around part of the time. I think with a 1300 milliamp hour 4S, lighter weight ESC, you'd be able to get the same amount of flight time that you get on a 3S 1300 milliamp hour LiPo. Pushing it about the same. But as you could see, on the 4S LiPo, it does have a bit more thrust, and it climbs vertically extremely well on the 4S compared to the 3S setup. So, and you'll probably have to adjust your movement on your control surfaces a little bit. I probably need to put a little more expo in my ailerons too. The elevator felt better that time because I increased the expo from 40% to 50%, so it wasn't so sensitive. And I would say I probably need to do the same thing on the ailerons. Move the expo from 40% to 50%, leaving the control surface movement the same, where it doesn't feel quite as abrupt. So that's my feeling on this EDF jet on a 4S LiPo. I really like it. If I don't have any 1300 milliamp hour 4Ss, but if I did, that's the way I would be flying it going forward after putting a lower weight, more compact 40 amp speed controller in it, because the performance is, you know, it's definitely significant improvement over a 3S setup. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.